You ever look on those headstones in the cemeteries? A lot of times you see interesting things written on there, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess a graveyard is a place where people put sometimes their last thoughts on the stones.
I saw a thing the other day. I told you about it. I think you pulled
I
it
did.
up.
I pulled it up
Ben
right before we
Franklin.
came on. Yeah, Ben Franklin.
He wrote his own.
Yeah.
What did it say?
I don't have that much forethought.
Yeah.
But he said the body of B. Franklin, printer, like the cover of an old book, its contents torn out and stripped of its lettering and gilding, lies here, food for worms.
Yeah.
Food for worms.
Pretty final, isn't it?
Yeah. You heard one too, didn't you?
Well, I actually saw a thing where this guy had gone through and got some sayings off of tombstones.
Yeah.
And the one that he saw that I was impressed with, it said, "I am what you will be."
Yeah. Yeah.
Great message of hope, wasn't it?
True. Yeah, not much hope there, is
well, neither in Ben Franklin's either, if you're food for worms.
Food, yeah.
Well, truthfully, I don't think if you're looking for messages of hope, I wouldn't go to where all the dead people
I don't
are.
think a cemetery is a place I really want to go.
No. It kind of reminds me of our buddy. I watch his podcast, Phil Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he always said. He said, we've all got a 6-foot hole waiting on us.
That's right.
Sort of a wake-up call, but that's actually biblical, though. Yeah. The Bible says we're all going to die.
We're all going to die once, and then judgment's coming.
So that's actually biblical. And you could think, well, like you said, that's pretty hopeless. But the good news of the message of the Bible is, hey, there's hope.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that's right?
Well, I think that's what we're about, is trying to look at the scriptures and find the truth from scriptures. And so we're going to, what is the truth about hope?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we just got through with Easter, and of course everybody's always talking about resurrection around Easter time. And it's good. I went back and read that narrative there from Jesus' resurrection, and at one point the angel told the people who came to Jesus' tomb, hey, what are you doing seeking the living with the dead?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's always jumped out at me.
Right.
I think sometimes we still do that.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that had more meaning than just what you read into it.
Right.
Why seek the living with the dead?
That's right. We serve a living God.
Yeah.
We say that. I mean, that's biblical too.
Yeah.
But some people, I think, would rather serve a dead God.
Some people think there's advantages in serving a dead God.
I'd say they sure do.
Yeah.
We actually put together a list of what some people might consider
the advantages
of serving a dead God. But
I don't know that I want to make that public,
we're going to compare that to the disadvantages. I think you'll see it's a pretty big disadvantage. It outweighs it pretty bad. Yeah, so I think we get a lot of interesting stuff out of this. Should be a good show. We hope everybody's enjoying the podcast. This is the Essential Truth Podcast. You can check us out anywhere you get podcasts on any of the directories. Make sure you subscribe on there. And if you want to help us out, a good way to do that is to share the content. Just copy the link or forward it to somebody you know who might want to hear a podcast about looking for truth in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're all about. We've also got the YouTube page too. If you'd rather watch the podcast, it's available on YouTube. Trying to get that thing going. Not sure how to do it, but hey, if you want to help us out, a good way to do it would be go on there and subscribe. That's a big deal. That helps us out. And then if you might want to click that bell too. There's a little bell right beside the subscribe button. Click that. That way it'll notify you when we put out a new show. We put out a new show every week. I made a mistake a couple weeks ago. I said we put out an episode every week for over a year. And then I messed up and I accidentally deleted last week's podcast. So we missed a week. So now I can't say that anymore. I jinxed it, I guess. I don't know. But now we put out a new episode every week. Click that bell on YouTube and you'll get notified. And make sure you check all the directories and subscribe anywhere you watch podcasts. So let's get into this. Are we seeking the living among the dead? Good conversation, I think. Let's get to it right after this. All right, so we asked the question, are we still guilty of seeking the living with the dead? I do think that's possible. Let's look real quick at the narrative. We'll look at Luke 24 and 5. I think the resurrection's covered in all four Gospels.
Right.
So we'll look at Luke's little version here, 24, verse 5. It says, the women were terrified. These are the ones that went to look for Jesus. Were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. Then the men asked, these were angels, I guess, asked, why are you looking among the dead for someone who is alive? Well, they were going to the grave, right?
Where Jesus
to
was
check
taken.
on Jesus' body.
Yeah.
and they were met with.
Well, actually, this is, I guess sometimes for us looking with all the facts and looking back, maybe it's easier to see, and we say, well, we wouldn't have done that. But these are these are the same women that were at the crucifixion.
Right.
I mean, and these are the same women that knew that Jesus had prophesied that he would resurrect himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you got to put yourself in their shoes. I mean, they had just watched him die.
Yeah.
I mean, they watched him get nailed up to the cross and take his last breath. They watched the Roman soldier jab the spear.
And there's no doubt that they were there to help wrap the body.
Yeah.
Even.
I mean, they had the funeral. I mean, done deal.
And so they had come to the grave.
Yeah.
Actually, they weren't looking for something that was alive.
They forgot about what he'd said. And
I mean, that's sort of amazing to us, I guess, but.
Yeah.
Well, going back what we were talking about, at the opening part, going to a cemetery, when we go there, to still mourn, we go there to have the thoughts of those people. So there's no doubt that next day, they went to
I think that's what they were doing, and they hadn't completed the burial rites, and they were going to complete that.
Right. Well, you have to keep in mind the Romans here carried out the execution, crucifixion. This wasn't their first rodeo. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, if you want to,
professionals.
If you want to look at a script for how to kill people, make sure they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the Romans.
They had it down to where they could make it quick, they could drag it out and make it painful. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had it figured out, and they thought, "Hey, this guy's dead."
Mm-hmm.
One of the interesting things that I've always thought about the crucifixion of Christ was that they had a remedy for making the death come on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, they'd let it go so long, and I guess when they got tired of messing around or people, they'd come by.
Weren't they?
They'd come by with a hammer,
and
they'd break your legs because they knew that would hasten the death real quick.
Right.
And they aimed to do that with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came by with the hammer to break his legs, he's already dead.
Right.
And then they checked it out, said, "How do you know?" And then they stuck a spear in his side, and water came out with blood.
Right.
When water and blood mix together, you're dead.
Yeah, that was actually prophesied.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And it was also prophesied that Jesus would be buried among the rich.
Right.
Which normally, when you crucified somebody, they took them off the cross, and there was a pile of, a hole over here, and they just
threw them into it, didn't they?
Yeah, just threw it away. But actually, was it Joseph?
Of Arimathea.
Yeah, he petitioned Pilate and said, "Hey, let me bury this guy." Kind of makes you wonder if Pilate didn't really, maybe he felt a little guilty, or he's like, I don't know if he did really. But.
Well, for one thing, I'm sure that he thought that he was dead.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He said, "Sure."
I've heard some people espouse in history that, they nailed him to the cross, but he was just in a coma and they took him off.
Yeah, I've heard those kind of theories.
I mean, the Romans weren't that stupid.
No. Not only that, also Jesus' friends, the people that were there at the cross, they wrapped his body.
That's right. That's what we said.
They had a funeral type situation.
That's per the Jewish custom.
If anybody really wanted you to be alive and wanted to doubt you were actually gone, wouldn't it be your closest followers and friends? And,
absolutely.
I mean, they didn't want it to be true, but they knew it was true. He was
remember,
dead.
Jesus' own mother was right there. I mean, if anybody,
that's right.
your mother.
Yeah, so basically, we say when they were amazed when this angel said, "Why are you looking for the living with the dead?" Yeah. They came looking for a dead body.
That's right.
I mean, they weren't looking for the right thing, really.
Yeah, that's right. And this was our point we were thinking about. It's sort of just a thought exercise. Are we still doing that now as people? Are we looking for something
in the wrong place? I think that's a good metaphor for the way we search for things in life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what everybody wants is to live.
Right.
And, so you look for solutions.
Yeah.
So
where do you look?
Yeah. So are we going to ask ourselves, are we looking at the dead things for life?
Well, we said when we started off, we kind of put together a little list. Maybe some people think it's better to serve a dead God.
Right.
We kind of put together a few things. I mean, if you think about it, a dead God's never going to make demands on you or ask things of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, some people say, I don't want any bounds on my life.
Right. And
so much easier to live, get up every day and go on about your own merry way, right?
Well, I've often thought about it. I think we asked this in our last episode. Why are people so upset about Christianity? I can see why somebody wouldn't believe maybe or think we're crazy, but why do they hate it so bad?
Why? Yeah. Why are they offended by
Maybe
the way we live?
That's right. Maybe it's because it points out things that in their life, and they don't want that.
I've often heard that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's true that there's a sinful nature in man.
Yeah.
I mean, we struggle with that. That's been from the very beginning. It's called free moral agency. I mean, God gave us that choice to begin with.
Right.
That's right.
And sometimes, you don't want somebody to call you out.
That's right.
So you just say, well, this God thing, it's not real.
Right.
It's just easier to do whatever you always want to do.
Yeah.
Never going to get
when
in
you
the
want
way.
to do it. Yeah.
I mean,
Not going to get in the way of what you want to do.
That's right.
A dead God doesn't say, we need your talent.
That's right.
We need your time.
Mm-hmm.
We need your resources.
Yeah.
We need you to be a person that
Benevolent
spreads
person,
the word.
Right.
Yeah.
We need a person that's benevolent to other people.
Charitable.
Charitable.
Well, I can just I'm not going to play devil's advocate with this, but I the thought just crossed my mind. But think about somebody listening to this right now, and they say, "Well, we've got laws about that. We've got laws that take care of this."
Yeah.
But really, in the end, those laws really don't amount to a whole lot.
No.
As we've seen, I think some of the laws have been unfairly, administered to different people. We've seen that. But in the
nice
end,
way of putting that there.
those laws
I tell you
are
the
still
truth.
man's laws.
I tell you the truth. In the business world, I've seen this personally.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen people that abide by the law that are very unethical.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Well, they say, "Well, I followed the letter of the law," and then they walked all over you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the living God demands you to be honest.
That's right.
I mean, ethical at all times, regardless of.
Yeah.
So if you're serving a dead God, that burden's gone.
But exactly.
And from the beginning of time, I don't know why, but sexual immorality has been a problem for man.
Absolutely, it has. Look at Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
I mean, and in today's world, I mean, if you don't want to be challenged about your sexual purity,
that's right.
Just say, well, I'm okay, you're okay. God doesn't exist for me.
The church at Corinth, church at Corinth in the New Testament even had an issue with it.
Yeah, sure.
That's right. A dead God is not a judge over you.
No, you can do what you want, say what you want, think what you want.
So, seems like a good long list there, doesn't it, of advantages of serving a dead God? What's the problem?
Well, number one, if you're looking for a way to heal your soul, a dead God can't do anything for you.
Not going to take care of that, is it?
Yeah.
Talking about that healing of your heart, of your spirit. And that's what the whole Bible's about getting rid of that sin out of us and offering us salvation. God's made that possible.
And
a dead God can't do that.
And he has a plan spelled out of how to access it.
And the ironic thing to me is, and we talked about, if you serve a dead God, all these advantages we said, but all those things are really things that make a slave out of you.
Yeah, that's right.
You become a slave to money. You become a slave to sexual immorality.
Yeah.
You become a slave to, everything that's, your addiction.
I think that sort of goes back to what Cole had said, gives those, things that, that's when, they don't like us as much is because maybe it feels, it makes them reveal things about their character.
That sin is always enticing. It looks good.
Yeah.
Until you get in there. But like you show me an addict that's happy.
Yeah.
Show me a relationship that's been ruined by sexual impurity and there's happiness there.
Yeah. Alcoholism.
Yeah. I mean, you could just go down the list of these sins. They suck you in. It is an imprisonment, an enslavement.
Yeah.
Right.
Serving a living God who says, hey, I can get rid of that for you.
Right.
Yeah.
That's freedom.
Yeah, and that's one disadvantage about a dead God.
That's right.
That they can't give you freedom.
No freedom. Yeah, think about prayer is an important thing to me. I mean, you can approach God, but are you praying to nothing? A dead God?
Yeah.
He can't hear. There's no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal to me.
And one thing is if you think of a bad incident that would take place in our country, like 9/11, if you go back, one of the unifying comments that's always said, we need to pray. We need to pray as a country. We need to do that. But if we didn't have God to pray to,
why do you pray?
Why do you pray?
Right. Yeah.
Why would that be important?
Yeah, when those events happen, 9/11 like that, and those tragedies, you always see the worst of humanity right there, and then you always see the best.
That's right.
I mean, that's what I like. Think about, there is no bad, there is no good, there is no God.
Well,
I mean,
and it gets
right.
back to what we're talking about. Where can you find hope?
That's right.
You know, I mean, you can't find hope in dead things.
That's right.
You know,
that's exactly right. And that's the problem with serving a dead God.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at some scriptures on this. We always turn to the Bible to look for truth, so let's look at a few. 1 Corinthians 15:19.
This is the one that I really like because
you use this one a lot.
I mean, really, this is this is talking about this life,
right,
or no afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, read that. That's a good one.
It says, "And if our hope in Christ is only for this life, we are more to be pitied than anyone in the world."
Yeah.
So if it's all about this life, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, it's pitiful.
Yeah. Let's say best case scenario, you get it all in life. I mean, great health, long life, unlimited money, and then you got that 6 foot hole waiting for you.
Well, you're like old Ben Franklin said, you're just food for the worms.
Worm food,
yeah.
On the wrong side of the grass. That's right. Ephesians 2:12. Here's another one that says, "In those days you were living apart from Christ. You were excluded from the citizenship among the people of Israel. You did not know the covenant promises God had made to them. You lived in this world without God and without hope."
Mm-hmm.
That last part there is what with no God, no hope.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty basic, isn't it?
Dead God, there's dead hope. There's no hope.
Yeah.
That's it. And we had one more. You got Ephesians 4:18, Steve?
Yeah, I can pull it up real quick. But I've got I had another one there I was
Oh,
going to share
you
with you. No, that's all right. I've already got over here to Ephesians. That's a nice thing about this. I don't have to thumb through my Bible like I used to. It says their minds are full of darkness. They wander far from the life of God gives because they have closed their minds and hardened their hearts against Him.
They're separated
from God.
Yeah, that's right. That's a recipe for hopeless and no hope.
Yeah.
We did a podcast on hopelessness, I think, once.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of the flip side of it, sort of covered some of the same thing. But I think it's a problem with us. We're always looking in the wrong place. We're looking for hope in the wrong place, life in the wrong place.
Yeah. Well, and you think of people who've got addictions, and and I know sometimes, and you've heard this, being an old hippie, I know, but just all it takes is that one time.
Yeah.
We hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Looking for some kind of a desire of something, that's out there, and next thing you know, they've gone down the path and they can't get out of it.
Right?
Really, I'm not a philosopher, but in my life on this earth, and I've talked to people, one of the things that I found that's common among everybody is everybody's looking for hope.
Yeah.
I mean, they may not walk up to you and say, "Tell me where hope is," but when you get in a conversation with somebody and you really get into what they feel, everybody wants to have some hope.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is say, where do I look?
Right.
Yeah.
And where do they start looking? I think they're kind of like these women were at the cemetery of Jesus.
Yeah.
Just simply in the wrong place.
I mean, they weren't looking in the right place.
Well,
Jesus wasn't in a grave.
That's right. Well, they had put all their hopes in Jesus.
Yeah.
They saw him die, and they thought, I don't know. I think some hopelessness probably came over.
Yeah, humanity.
They probably had some big questions, and they were going back to the tomb to look for something. They were trying to find something. I don't know, peace of mind somehow. I don't know.
I mean, you would have thought
they were in the wrong. They were looking for the wrong thing.
Yeah, you would have thought that they would have said, "No need of us going back to the graveyard."
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I'm sure when they saw that stone rolled across it after he had been buried, I mean, they knew he wasn't going nowhere.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, the stone, you talked about that. The stone was really rolled away.
Not so Jesus could get out.
That's right.
It's so they could get in and see that it was empty.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There's only one place, really, that we can find the living God, and it's in that story of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus.
Yeah.
That's where our hope is.
And I think some people, on first thought, if they really haven't, and it's like that passage said that through ignorance, they were separated from God.
Right.
And if you're ignorant of the narrative of God that he tells us in the scriptures, then you don't understand that. And it's kind of ironic, if somebody that was ignorant of God
Yeah.
And they came to you and said, where do you find hope?
Yeah.
Go back to the death of Christ.
Right.
I didn't.
Isn't that odd?
Yeah.
Well,
Because in his death,
We have hope.
we have hope.
well, I'm not going to summarize our whole discussion in this passage because I know we're going to keep going, but I think it's interesting, but because it ties into what we were just talking about in that list of bad things, of that, and then it goes into what you just said, and starting here in verse 3, Romans 5, it says we can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know there's that list. For we know that they help us develop endurance, and endurance develops strength, and character strengths of our confident hope of salvation. This hope will not lead to disappointment, for we know we dearly love God because He has given us this Holy Spirit for our hearts with His love.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, let's look a little bit closer at that. Because how could you find hope in the death of Jesus? I think that's an interesting thing to think about. We'll be right back. All right, so when we look at that, one of the big things we're big on is looking at the narrative of the Bible and the story of the Bible. And the main event of the Bible was the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. We call it the good news for a reason. Yeah. Because in Jesus' dying, He died in our place. He took sin, became guilty for it Himself, died. And then there's that great hope that we have in the resurrection. He proved that there's life beyond this. He did it, and He said, hey, follow me. You can do it too.
You know, one of the amazing things about what God has done through Christ is that here's God who's eternal, and He becomes like us. He becomes flesh. Mm-hmm. And what are we, what's the one thing that man is really terrified of? Eternal death. Yeah. And so here comes God in the form of man in Jesus Christ, and He dies just like us. Yeah. But He beats death, and He proves that if He could, He said we can too.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And that's really what sets Jesus apart and Christianity apart from anything else.
Yeah.
Anything else.
Yeah, people talk about other great religions. Yeah. I've always wondered, and I don't mean to be.
Yeah, I don't want to pick on
anybody, but you can, if you're a Buddhist, you follow Buddha.
Right. Where is he?
He's got a grave, and his bones are still there.
Right. What about
Muhammad? And as far as
there's a grave there, and his bones are still there.
Right.
That's right. Jesus is set apart in this.
There's a grave.
Yeah, but He's not.
He's not in it. Yeah. They've not found it.
That's right.
No.
I'd put my faith in a resurrected leader.
That's right. And there's so much. We did a podcast once on a lot of the evidences
of the resurrection.
Yeah, if you want to dig into it, I'm telling you, there's a lot of proof pointing.
Yeah,
absolutely. Jesus is not dead.
There's a lot of unbelievers that have been converted to believers because they said, "I'm going to prove that Jesus doesn't exist."
In fact, I believe we even sort of
pointed that
out in with a gentleman.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you don't just have to be looking at other religions to get off track. I think one of the biggest ones that can get you off track is you become your own religion. Yeah, you set your own standard.
It goes back to sort of that list that you talked about, though. Yeah. If you think about it, if we don't have a God to condemn us, or a God that's going to judge us, or a God that's going to tell us right from wrong,
well, that sounds good, but then who makes the standard then? Yeah. Society, ourselves? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that's there's some people that put all their eggs in this life. Yeah. We say put all your eggs in one basket. Mm-hmm. Just recently I watched a documentary about Hemingway.
Yeah.
Which was a great writer. But ultimately, he put all his hope in this life, and I don't know if you've ever read The Old Man and the Sea. Yeah. But the final thing that he said there, I've gone too far.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what Hemingway shot himself, killed himself. He had no hope.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a hopeless life. And I think, there's some people that want to hang on to that, but there's some people then, Cole, I think that'll come back and say, well, I won't have hope in another life, and I'm going to earn that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody says that outright. So, they don't really say, hey, I'm so good I deserve to be in heaven, but a roundabout way,
Yes,
we believe that.
They believe
get
it.
there.
I mean, it gets back to that. They act like there's a balance over here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've done some bad things,
But I've done
some good things, and I'm going to do more good and bad, and that'll...
Usually included in that, I'll say, well, I know this guy over here. He's a lot worse than me.
Yeah.
I'm better than him.
So that puts my scale up.
Right.
I think our previous podcast, we even had a verse in there that said, I did all this stuff, and did it for the right reasons, God, but, he says, I don't know you. I don't know who you are.
Well, you put your trust in yourself. That's not going to work out good for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people trust in, I don't know, some kind of political system or some kind of culture or society.
Or government.
I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but every government, every society, every kingdom, empire that's ever existed is gone.
Comes to an end.
It's come and gone. And, hey, the ones that are here now, if time goes on, they will too.
Yeah.
A lot of people putting their trust in science or medical research, and I've got no problems with any of those things.
Right.
Yeah.
They might can add some years onto your life or
But
quality
it's
even
a
to your
false
life.
hope, though.
Yeah.
But they're not
They're
not
not gonna
living
stop
forever.
Well,
Yeah,
just like you
that's
said,
right.
Phil said, there's there's a hole in the ground waiting
That's
for
right.
you.
It's still there, and you can't get around it, can you?
Well, the truth of the matter is, some people put their hope and trust in earning their salvation.
Right.
And
That's just not the biblical
that,
way.
I think if that angel could come to earth today and look at that people that do that, that angel would say, "Why are you seeking the living with the dead?"
That's right. The Bible narrative is heaven is for people who just trust Jesus and follow him.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, in Jesus' time, there was people that were devout, religious, good people.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a verse that comes to my mind in Matthew.
That Matthew verse that we
Yeah. I've got it right here too.
Okay.
Look at this. This is a real warning from Jesus. Matthew 7:21 through 23. Jesus says, "Not everybody who calls out to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who actually do the will of the Father will enter. On Judgment Day, many will say, 'Hey, I've done all these great things, prophesied and then performed miracles or whatever.' But I'll reply, 'I never knew you. Get away from me, you who break God's law.'"
That's that passage I was referring to.
He said he actually do God's will.
Right.
And, and Jesus has made his will plain for us.
Right.
He has said, made it plain, and the apostles made it plain after the resurrection. Remember what Peter said right after the resurrection? Mm-hmm. He said, look, if you believe that Jesus Christ is the resurrected Savior, if you're willing to repent and change your ways and say, I don't want to be sinful, I want to follow Christ, you're willing to be baptized where you can reenact that death and the burial and resurrection, then you can have a guarantee of eternal life.
Right. That's how you follow Jesus' path on the
and Peter didn't say, well, you have to do all these good works.
Yeah, that's right.
We're not saying that Christians don't do good works.
That's right.
But that's just a sidebar. Obedience is obedience.
Yeah, well, I think, these people here were saying to Jesus, we've done good things, and I think they had.
Yeah.
Right.
But his warning was, that's not the biblical way.
It was almost like they wanted the easy way of doing something.
Yeah. Well, we think we can do enough good to overcome where we've come short, and that's just not the biblical message.
Well, I don't think there's any place that makes it any plainer than the Ephesian writer when he says, "Look, salvation is grace,"
Right.
And we know grace is defined as something I don't merit,
unmerited favor.
Ephesians, do you have that passage?
Yeah, Ephesians 2:8-9. God saved you by His grace when you believed. You cannot take credit for this. It is a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we've done, so none of us can boast about it.
It's a gift.
So, it's the work that Christ did for us on the cross.
Yeah, and there's nothing that we can do.
Right, not the good things we do. So, what are some ways that can get us, we can find ourselves, I guess, figuratively seeking the living among the dead? They were actually at the tomb looking for, but we're talking more figuratively now, I think.
Well, self.
Right.
Self-complacency.
Selfishness. Yeah.
Selfishness. I think, it basically gets back to that. We look at our own self,
Right. That's our primary thing. Also getting wrapped up in things of the world. That seems to be one. We forget about God, forget about our neighbor. We're thinking about ourselves. We're thinking about our reputation, our bank accounts, or our amount of success.
Yeah.
all these things can knock us off. I mean, those are dead things, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's no hope in those.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're, as Christians, we should be as fruitful as we can. We should be as, do all that we can and, to good.
Yeah.
But don't put our hope and trust in worldly things.
That's right. Well, it's like I said, if you amass all the money and success in the world, you might get your name on a building or a monument, but
death is an equalizer.
Yeah.
you're still worm food, like Ben said. So, I think we can still be guilty of it. I think, basically, it is hopeless without Jesus.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's the basic message. I mean,
when you start to think about it, without Jesus, what is the answer to this
I mean,
problem?
if you look at the essential truth of what the scriptures say, I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
Well, I'm going to read you a passage from Romans 15:4 because it says exactly that, Chris. It says, such things were written in the scripture long ago to teach us, and the scriptures gives us hope and encouragement as we wait patiently for God's promises to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And without that, there is no hope.
Yeah.
That's right. There's no foundation under us. There's nothing that can give us life after death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I talked about science and medical stuff. Yeah, they can prolong your life maybe with that, maybe even make it a better life. I'm all for that. But that 6-foot hole's still there. You can even do the plastic surgery, Steve, now to make yourself look young or whatever. But
well,
not going to work.
And truthfully, the scriptures do teach us that our body is the temple of the soul.
Yes.
And so we need to do all we can to protect our body.
Absolutely, we need to take care of it.
Yeah.
But we do need to know that Hebrews 9:27,
that's right.
Is a fact.
Yeah. We're all going to die, and after that,
The
judgment.
That's scriptural.
Death is appointed to everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all going to die. I know there are some people out there that maybe think that they can cheat death.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen these people that, they freeze themselves in
Right.
liquid nitrogen,
Right.
thinking that they'll.
Well, the new thing is now they say they're going to be able to download your consciousness into a chip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then right before you die, they can pull that out and put it in somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not trusting in that. You?
Yeah. Well, I'd let my consciousness be in God's hands myself.
That might cover you unless you
If
you had an accident.
I think that gets into one of those, someone who definitely have to have a God complex in order to be able to do something like that.
I don't have much confidence in that. But if you want to wait for that, I guess it's your choice. But the bottom line, without Jesus, no hope. It's emptiness. When you die, I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah.
I don't see anything else. I mean, if anybody else sees anything else, I'd be happy to listen to it, but I can't see another way.
Well, I think the human tragedy is that for centuries there's been philosophers and skeptics, that have preached the hopelessness of life. Yeah. I mean, look at a lot of the poetry.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
about tragedy.
Oh, it is about tragedy. Woe is me. And,
I mean, but Jesus changes all that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So Jesus is hope. What he did there on the cross is, especially his resurrection, that's a big thing.
That's right.
So
shows us it's possible.
Yeah, and if you want hope, you got to look in the right place.
Right.
That's right. That's the essential truth.
Yeah.
That's what our name is. All right. I think that's a good one. It gives me some hope. And we'll wrap it up there, but glad you watched the podcast. Check it out anywhere you get podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe. Did I mention that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts?
Sure
I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but I think that really helps us out. So if you can go do that for us, and you can even leave a little review of our podcast there. So if you have something nice to say, leave it. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything.
Right.
No, that's good. If you want to comment or send us an email too, we love to hear from our listeners. You can send me the email at theessentialtruth@yahoo.com, or just leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube or whatever like that.
Sounds good.
But we'll wrap it up there. It's been another good episode. We appreciate everybody watching. We'll be back soon. Until then, God bless you, and we'll see you soon.